You are listening to the Marc Guzman Podcast Experience. Before we get started, just a reminder that you can find all of my available rental properties on my website at marcguzman.com. If you own investment property, click on the Owner Services section to see our complete list of services. When she isn't taking photos of a wedding, you can find Simone Anne somewhere in the world taking photos on her camera or iPhone, showcasing the beauty and the color the world has to offer. As a traveling professional photographer, Simone has been to some of the most unique and colorful places on Earth: Asia, Europe, the Americas, and Africa. Each destination is captured through her own lens. Today, we catch her between travels and hear her story of how she turned her love of photography into a career that spans the globe. Simone, thank you for coming out.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, so I found you on Instagram, and you're a Bay Area local, and your Instagram page is extremely phenomenal. It's awesome. I love the photography there, and we're going to get into what you do because you have a lot of talent. And so we'll go ahead and link up your Instagram page to the description to the podcast, and really everyone needs to go check out her page. So where did you just get back from? Because you've been traveling a lot.
I was just in India in January. I was in Belize in January, and then I've been home for a little bit. So
you went to India and Belize in January?
Yeah, I actually had tickets to go to Belize long before India was planned. And then India was a personal trip, although for me, I find that my work and my personal travel often goes together really well. So, some things that I shoot for personal work end up being licensed for travel work, and sometimes the travel work is just fun enough that it could be personal work.
And how many days were you in India for?
Just shy of 3 weeks.
Okay. Any particular part of that trip that really stood out?
I was in northern India, so I flew into Delhi, went to see the Taj Mahal, of course, and then spent some time in some of the desert cities in Rajasthan, which is all northern India. They have forts there that are 800 years old, and just the history is so exciting and interesting.
Is that where you took the picture with the 3 camels?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I did an overnight safari in the desert and spent the night sleeping on the dunes in the sand and riding camels during the day, and it was really crazy and cool.
So camping out in the desert, at any point does that get scary?
No, I have a lot of backpacking and outdoor experience, so I'm used to being out in nature and out in the environment. I would say that if you're able to spend the night in the desert, you'll find that it's one of the most peaceful places that you could be. It's just you and the silence of the desert. I find that the sunset is like that red, deep red, and it kind of blankets the sand, and then we were able to wake up for sunrise and just see the first light on the sand. It's nice and pink and soft, and then slowly climbs into the day.
And I assume you can see all the stars, and night sky's beautiful, right?
More stars than you've ever seen.
Now, how big are these camels? Because I know they're a good size, but many people, especially here in the Bay Area, have never seen a camel any time in their life. So what are they like?
Yeah, to get on a camel, you have to. Your guide or the camel safari man, they're really proud of. They call themselves camel men, which is just I think it's such a great. I don't know. It's instead of a cowboy, you're a camel man. They have the camels kneel, and you have to climb on, and the camel can only get up 2 feet at a time. So it sort of tilts, and you have to hold on really tight so you don't slide off. I think probably I came up to the underside of the belly of the camel.
Wow.
Yeah, they're pretty tall and big, and they have a real loping walk as they walk. You really are bouncing around and things.
Yeah, that's very cool. And now, after India, you went to Belize.
After India, I was in Belize. It's chill. It's chill there.
Yeah, Belize, I hear, and based on what I've seen, is very similar to Costa Rica, where I've gone many times. And the water, the beaches, everything's just beautiful, and it's really laid back, very chill.
Super laid back, sand on the streets, kind of laid back, beautiful turquoise waters, snorkeling, saw eels and fishes, and swam with nurse sharks. Super cool.
Nurse sharks?
Yeah, they're kind of blind.
Okay.
And they kind of look like, I don't know, a leopard shark or something. And they kind of just hang out in the water off of the reef. They have a pretty big reef out there. I haven't been lucky enough to go to Costa Rica. I would love to one day, but it's certainly a gorgeous place in Belize.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what's the next big destination you have?
I'll be in Italy in about a week. I head out actually for a few weeks, as well as Turkey.
Very cool. So what part of Italy are you going to?
I am going north of Rome. I don't have it totally mapped out yet. So I'll be spending the first 2 weeks north of Rome. My mom and dad are actually joining me, so that'll be a fun trip. And then the last week I will be solo, and I think I'll be heading south towards the Amalfi Coast, but I haven't quite figured it out yet.
Okay. So it sounds like you do these trips without much planning involved. Is that correct?
Sometimes. I would say it depends. With the portion where I'm going to be with my parents, mom and dad are a little bit more planning, like to have things, I don't know, last minute averse, I should say. But I do really like to travel by the seat of my pants. I feel like when you're going places, it's hard to know what it's going to be like before you get on the ground. And that's when you can start to talk to people. You can talk to locals. You can talk to other people who are traveling around and see what they're up to. And that's when I feel like you realize what you're really excited about and what destinations you're really looking forward to heading to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like I used to travel quite a bit. I haven't done much traveling lately, but one of the best things I love about traveling is just seeing all these unique places and really just wandering the streets and really finding things that you would never really find anywhere out here, right? Mm-hmm. And just really getting a sense of what the people are like and their culture. And I think it just exposes and opens up your mind to so many different more possibilities. It gives you a different perspective on life, right?
It's so true. I really think one of my favorite things to do when I'm in a foreign country is spend golden hours. So, I don't know, an hour and a half or 2 hours before sunset, all the way through dusk when it starts to get too dark to walk around, just meandering through the streets with my camera. I think, especially when you're in a hot destination, but kind of anywhere, that's when like the streets come alive, right? And I think so many cultures not in the U.S. have a really vibrant street culture. And so, I don't know, India, Mexico, even Italy or Europe, Southeast Asia, so many places have things going on at night, restaurants, food, just out on the street. And so just walking around and seeing what people are up to can just be the most like fascinating thing.
Yeah. How is the food in India? Because a lot of people here are scared to try the food in India when they travel.
Don't be scared. Eat it all. I mean, I would say like exercise a little bit of caution. My general go-to, I've been lucky enough, I should say knock on wood, but I don't know if I should do that with a recording, is that I haven't actually ever gotten sick eating food, and I eat a lot of street food and I don't know, food from restaurants that aren't necessarily like recommended for Westerners. What I would say the most important things is to go places where locals are going. That's not going to protect you from everything. There are things that sometimes locals are better adapted to. But often if it's busy with the people in the country, it's going to be just fine. The other thing, if you're nervous, like hot food is always going to be better. And sometimes people are vegetarian in India. I'm naturally like I eat a little less meat. I can still go for barbecue sometimes, but I'll generally eat a more vegetarian diet. So that was pretty easy. And a lot of people don't eat that much meat in India. So a lot of vegetarian can be an easier way to, I don't know, quote, stay safe. Mm-hmm. But just eat it. It's so good. There's so much good food. I mean, fresh samosas, fresh Indian food, naan that's just coming out of like the clay pot tandoori ovens. I don't know, butter chickens and bangan barta, which is like mashed eggplant. I ate so much good food in India.
It sounds like it. And it's funny that you say that because now that you're going to Italy, one of the best pieces of advice I was given when I went to Italy was don't eat at any place that's called a restaurant because they're going to rip you off. It's way overpriced. You want to look for the trattorias and look at where the locals are going for. So when I was over there, I would literally skip every big fancy restaurant that was packed full of people, and I would walk the streets and look in the alleyways for the 185-year-old guy who's smoking and sitting on the steps to this tiny little trattoria, right? Because as soon as you walk in and then you sit down and you get this family-style meal for really cheap and amazing food, and then that's where you really get to experience like their culinary.
Yeah.
And their culture.
Yeah. I'm half Italian. My mom is Italian American. But So pretty familiar with the Italian food, really excited to kind of definitely see what's off the beaten path and eat some really good food.
Yeah. Now, you've also done something that many people have not done, is the John Muir Trail. Correct?
I did, yeah.
And that's 211 miles from, I believe it was Yosemite Valley to...
the top of Mount Whitney.
Yes, Mount Whitney.
Yeah, so
how did you prepare for that? Did you even prepare for it? And then what was it like?
So I solo hiked it. This is July 2015. Woke up at I didn't have a permit. Demand for permits for the John Muir Trail have gone up sky high in the last, 5 years or so. And I think there's a lot of excitement about being outside and backpacking in the younger generation that maybe, it wasn't there earlier. But it's almost impossible to get permits ahead of time. So I went and they save, I think it's 40% for the day before. And so I actually had my boyfriend's little sister drive me up. We left the Bay Area at 2 a.m. We got to Yosemite, I don't remember, like 6 or 7 or something. Drove through the night and then sat in my camp chair outside the permit office and got my permit at 11 in the morning to leave the next day. It was fabulous. I always say it was about 220 miles because you do, I did some like off trails and stuff. And it was actually one of the rainier summers that we'd had. I had hail that was the size just about of a quarter, which is hard to imagine. I'd come up and over this pass in like the middle of a storm. There was thunder and lightning for me is the one thing that I'm truly afraid of on trail. So bears, I think as long as you practice like safe food handling techniques and aren't being stupid about it, then bears are going to leave you alone. Well, not grizzlies, but we don't have grizzlies in California anymore. Brown bears will really leave you alone, black bears. But lightning, especially when you're traveling alone, can be like a really legitimate fear and really scary. And so when there's storms and you still need to keep going, you really have to time it to make sure that you're not going to be up at the top of a pass when you're at your highest point where there's no tree cover when a lightning storm strikes. So sometimes you hear it off in the distance and you're like, all right, I just got to power through this hill and get down on the other side. And so I remember coming down.
So the fear of lightning is the fact that it might hit you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And people don't always die. You don't usually die from the hit itself. It's like it messes with your heart and you die in the next 10 minutes. So sometimes people are able to resuscitate people. If you're traveling in a party and someone's been hit, it can be, you have a little bit of a higher chance of survival. But if you're by yourself, Are
there a lot of people that do it by themselves?
Not that many. I think that there has been more people in the past, more recent past, but no. I was going to do it with my partner, but he ended up getting a new job just before we were going to head out, a couple months before, and he was like, I can't go. And I was like, well, I'm going to go anyway. I don't really care. So
yeah. So did you do the entire 211 miles?
Uh-huh.
So going through this, how do you prepare for it? Because you're going through mountains, valleys, but how do you physically prepare for this? Was it something that you were really prepared for, or did it catch you off guard?
I would say that anyone would probably agree with this who has done it. You can always be more prepared. So I definitely could have been in better shape, or I could have been more prepared. But I do a lot of backpacking and I'm pretty active. I climb and I hike and stuff. So generally speaking, pretty good. I think that because I did it a little bit last minute and without too much planning, I didn't prep specifically for it as much as I might have if it had been something that I was training for and planning on for the last six months previous to it. I know a lot of people who did and probably hiked faster than me. I tend to think that one of the advantages of going solo is that you can really go at your own pace and your own hours. So I am not a super fast hiker, and I'm a big proponent of saying that anyone who wants to hike can. You just have to give yourself enough time for your abilities. So I gave myself just about 3 weeks to do the time, and I had a 0 day here and there where I kind of just hung out, or a shorter day where I maybe did a couple miles, and then I had some days where I did maybe 10 or 15 miles, but totally depending on how I was feeling. The other thing about the John Muir Trail, the first day is one of the hardest, I think, because you go from the valley floor in the Valley of Yosemite, Happy Isles, is the trailhead. So if you've ever been up to Yosemite, you've probably been out there. And you go all the way up and out. You go past the turnoff for Half Dome, and that's where you spend your first night. And that was huge elevation gain. I want to say it's like 3,000 feet of elevation gain, and I had a headache by the end of the day. But after that, the work up to Mount Whitney is pretty gradual in terms of the elevation change. So you're going from where you're, I don't know, around 8,000, 9,000 feet of elevation gain on a regular basis, maybe even 7,000 or 8,000 feet, to the top of Mount Whitney, which is about 14,500 feet. And so that actually, the 3 weeks that you spend hiking gives you the chance to acclimatize to the elevation.
So how much food did you bring with you?
So there are a couple locations along the trail where you can mail yourself food ahead of time. So I did the 2 drops that are on the trail, or like one of them is 1 mile off trail. So that's not so bad. So I did a little bit of a detour to head to it. But so I did 2 food drops. So I brought 8 days of food approximately, and then another 8, and then I think my final one was 11 days. But the 11 days, that's pushing it for sure in a bear canister, because you have to fit it all in a bear canister so that the bears can't get to it. That's pushing it, and I ran out of cold food by the end. So I had hot food, but like for a lunch or a breakfast on the go, that's not super great. And I remember some trail friends, some people that I'd kind of met on the trail and would hopscotch with and see, they were like, we have a couple extra bars, which is actually super generous, right? Because, they'd planned for some extra, and it was kind of near the end of the trip.
Yeah, that was nice of them.
It was totally nice because they'd actually been carrying it. And that's one thing that we really don't think about, is like how heavy food can be. So
yeah, that's very cool. Now, you got some amazing photos out of that, too. What was your favorite photo out of that trip?
I had, it was interesting because I have some regrets in terms of photos on that trip. I shoot a lot of like astrophotography, star photos, just for fun usually. But it was cloudy almost every night, which meant that was not something that I could do as much. So I do wish that I had more star photos. But in terms of favorite photos, one thing that I was really lucky to see was a lot of rainbows. So, okay, no stars, but a lot of rainbows. And I have some photos with rainbows and mountains that just they bring back the memories for sure.
Yeah. Now, at what age did you start getting into photography?
I took a black and white film class my senior year of high school, and just wanted to fulfill an A through G requirement to go to one of the UC schools, and totally fell in love with it. It was super fun, but I didn't necessarily think that it was going to be something I was going to turn into a career. I went to Cal. I originally was going to do a poli-sci major. I ended up writing my thesis on urban food systems and public health. I did like a design year-round major. Nothing to do with photography. I did do photography while I was at school. I worked on the student newspaper, fashion magazine, did stuff for friends all the time. But one of the things that really turned it into a career option was a total coincidence. That senior year class, trying to finish up a roll of film, I took my mom to the park so I could use her as a model and subject to finish up my roll, get it in for class on Monday. And my mom does not like being photographed, and so she was like, just ask that woman over there. Super small town. I grew up in Half Moon Bay, so on the coast. And she's like, sure. Yeah, you can grab a couple photos of me. So I take a couple photos of this woman. She's like super nice about it. At the end, she goes, I'm actually a professional photographer. So,
wow.
Yeah, it was kind of total happenstance. And I ended up spending the next year working with her, like through the rest of my senior year of high school as my summer job. And then the following summer as my summer job. She was shooting all film at the time. She shot weddings. She was shooting all film at the time. And so I would sort the proofs. I would help load albums. I would come to client sessions and see her working with photographers. And then she kind of got me into shooting weddings because I would come along with her.
Okay. So that's how you started to shoot weddings.
Yes.
Now, is that the big bulk of what you do today? Or is it a mix? Mm-hmm.
So it used to be full-time, but I have been a professional photographer for almost 10 years now, now that we've hit 2018. And did it while I was like in college, and then I had a marketing job for a year, and I've been full-time by myself as a freelancer for the last 5 years. And in that time, I've transitioned from fully weddings. I was shooting about 30 weddings a year to now I shoot about 20 weddings a year, and then I'm able to fill the rest of my time with then I'm able to fill the rest of my time with travel, small businesses. I work with some really rad small businesses in San Francisco, on the peninsula, over here in Berkeley, or working with travel companies to share their destinations.
Okay, so these travel companies, and I want to touch on this a little bit because it's something that's very unique to today's day and age with the internet and what's possible. You get paid to travel and take photos. Sometimes.
Yeah.
And I know there's plenty of people that have actually built that, and that's all they do is travel. They get paid to travel, take photos or videos, and blog. And that's something very unique to today's day and age. Bless you.
Oh, no, it's gone.
And it's very unique to today's day and age because you wouldn't hear that. I mean, well, there were very few people like Anthony Bourdain on TV, right? You had to be someone big on TV, cable, or in some big magazine. But now so many people can do it, and they could build a following online, and that following allows them to now that's me here. Sorry about that.
No worries.
I don't know why that's ringing.
Usually all these silence are from beforehand.
Yeah. Actually, I don't even know why it's ringing because I've got Do Not Disturb on this. Really weird. Okay. So how does that work? I mean, these companies reach out to you and then they tell you where they want you to go, or are they just asking you where you're going to go and then kind of compensate you for it and just ask you to send them photos? How does that work?
So I don't usually shoot travel as an influencer. I shoot travel as an editorial photographer or a commercial photographer. So those are definitely different avenues. And I can't speak for everyone. I would say that often influencers are probably not making that much money, but that's not really my area of expertise. So some of the travel jobs that I do, I went to China with United a year ago, 2 years ago maybe, and they licensed some of the images for their website. That was because they were launching a new direct route to Hangzhou in China, and they wanted images that showed A, their product, the direct route, and B, the destination of why you would want to get on that plane.
So how do you connect with a company like United? Did they reach out to you, or do you reach out to them?
So I had an app that I work with and shoot for, was approached by them, and so they wanted content regarding Hangzhou and their direct route in the app.
Okay.
So it's not necessarily for me. It's not because I will share it on Instagram necessarily. Although I know that there are definitely people that are out there doing that. I'm going to Colombia this year with a company that just hosts small group travel, and part of the product that the client is purchasing is professional photos from the trip. So I am providing the professional photos.
So I love your photography. It's very unique. And what's the style that you really aim for in what you shoot?
I really want authenticity to come across. I think that, I do want it to be aspirational. I do want it to be beautiful. I'm shooting more editorial style, lifestyle than documentary. I'm not sharing, deep human interest stories or something like that, although that stuff is really cool. I want it to feel real, though. I think that a lot of times stuff that we find on the internet is maybe partially constructed, and that's wonderful and that's a great form of art, but for me, I want my stuff, and the editorial clients that are hiring me, they want stuff to feel exciting and beautiful and wonderful, but also achievable. So something that you're flipping through a magazine and you see something gorgeous and a beautiful place, and you get on United and book your next flight, and then when you're there, you can have a version of that trip and that experience. So my images are definitely curated. I'm definitely putting my particular voice and style into it, but it's something where I want it to speak to you as something that you could really see and go do.
Is there a lot of time in trying to capture a photo, or is it kind of you're just taking a lot of shots along the way and then just seeing what works?
It depends on each client for sure. So sometimes when I do stuff in San Francisco, I have clients that have like very specific needs. I work with this wonderful coffee company, Lady Falcon Coffee Club, and when I work with them, we often have like a very specific objective of where in San Francisco we want to show their stuff, what vibe exactly we're going for, who the target market is with the images. For some travel stuff, it's more about what I see that I think tells the story. So I definitely do spend a fair amount of time on certain images, but then sometimes with more documentary style images, it's very quick. I don't want to be spending too long working on each image because then the vibe of the moment, the excitement that I'm trying to capture is not going to necessarily be there anymore.
Mm-hmm. So a lot of just natural in the moment.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that allows me to shoot travel really easily and well is that I've had a lot of practice with wedding photography, and that's exactly the same kind of shooting, right? I'm looking for the most exciting moment. I'm looking for the time when, I don't know, the couple or the family or the wedding emotions are at their highest, and when you look at that photo, you're going to actually feel how it felt during that day. Yeah. And that's what you want when you're, traveling. If someone's, I don't know, if you're at like a private, I don't know, dance area or something. I shot a family that was sharing like salsa when I was in Cuba with a travel company, and they, the clients were having the most fun and the teachers were having the most fun. And what you want when you're looking at those photos to come across is the vibrancy of salsa and the vibrancy of dance. Mm-hmm. And so it's not me posing people. It's me like hoping and waiting and having technical experience to capture that specific moment when I feel like it really
it's like telling the story of that specific moment of whatever you're shooting.
Exactly.
Yeah. Now, how do you use social media to really get your work out to the public? I know you have quite a few followers on Instagram, but are you only on Instagram? Are you using Facebook or even Snapchat?
So for social media, I'm definitely basically Instagram only. I have a blog and a website that I share on a lot. I keep my wedding work and my travel editorial commercial work separate online just because I think that they're essentially entirely different audiences, although I think that often my wedding clients love seeing my travel stuff, and commercial clients that are hiring me for travel in their personal life love to take a look at portraits and weddings and stuff. I definitely use social media. I definitely use Instagram. I started using it just for fun. A few years ago, more than a few years ago when it launched, and it's just been a total blast. I would say that one of the things I like to bring to it is I have a love of captions, so I really like to share additional details. I think sometimes when you're traveling, you can get lost in how gorgeous something is, and what I want is that I want someone to get lost when they're looking at my images, get lost in how gorgeous it is, but then also be able to fill that in with some information. So, when I was talking about staying in an 800-year-old fort in India and Rajasthan, that's incredible, but just looking at a photo of the fort is beautiful, but doesn't necessarily tell the whole story. So I really like to pad it out with additional information, and I find that people are really responsive to that. They really like when I'm able to give them additional context. And then I definitely do use stories as well. I think it's a really fun, easy way to augment the, more official posts that I'm sharing on Instagram.
Give the audience a behind the scenes type deal, right?
Especially with the photography, it's, people are always wanting to know what that looks like in terms of a career. So it can be really fun to share what it's like on the backside.
Yeah. Now, what's the camera that you use?
I shoot with a 5D Mark IV. It's well loved to the point where it's a little bit silver on the bottom. Some of the black paint has worn away. I always joke that I just go through cameras so fast. I killed one in Iceland last summer in a rainstorm. I went out to shoot something, and the rain came in, and I was not near the car, and I had a waterproof backpack, but the rain was so sideways. Anyone that's been to Iceland will be like, oh my gosh, I know exactly what she's talking about. But the rain and the wind in Iceland can be so strong that, it's going sideways, and it's driving into my, the back between sort of where the backpack hits your back. And that part was apparently not quite as waterproof as the rest. So I unfortunately killed a camera that way. I sent it off to Canon and had my fingers crossed. And then they were like, nope, I'm afraid there is nothing we can do to fix this one. So I just replaced it.
So do you carry like just a ton of filters all the time with the camera, or do you have one set piece that you really use?
Yeah, I have a big kit of lenses that I use for weddings, and then for travel stuff, I definitely pare that down since I'm going to be traveling. I like to travel with a carry-on when I can. I use a 24-70 lens when I'm traveling, and that pretty much covers, I would say, I was in Eastern Africa a while ago now and brought like a bigger, longer lens because I was going to be shooting wildlife as well. Obviously, that's going to be an extenuating circumstance where I'm going to need another kind of lens. But I find that for most stuff, for food, for landscapes within cities and urban areas, for travel, then that lens usually covers me.
And do you still shoot weddings?
I do. Yeah, I shoot about 20 a year. So I shoot about 20 versus 30 before. Yeah.
Okay. I'll have to refer you over to my sister. She's getting married next year.
Oh, perfect.
Now, when you're shooting a wedding, I mean, what exactly are you looking for? I mean, obviously everyone wants great, amazing photos, but I also hear from various people that, yeah, the photos that we got are not the best. We've had to kind of pick and choose. And so from a photographer point of view, I mean, what are you looking to really capture? How are you putting the story together through photos?
Yeah, I think that for the most part throughout a wedding day, I want it to be, I'm sort of shooting with the goal in mind of an album that really tells the day. So I do want to get my clients those, beautiful images that's just the two of them, maybe at sunset, or I have a lot of clients that do it before the wedding because I want to spend more time during cocktail, like visiting with the people that they've invited. I really want it to tell the whole story, and I want it to be just chock full of emotion. So my goal is always good light and then good emotion. So I say I'll take care of the good light and the photo angles, and you take care of the good emotion. And it's really nice, now that I've been doing it for so long, I find that my clients really self-select to be people that are on the same wavelength as me and the same vibe. I don't think that there's going to be one photographer for every kind of client and every client's needs or every couple's needs. But a lot of my clients get married outdoors. They have sort of a love of outdoors or a love of travel in common with me. And they want something that's really personal and intimate in their photos. The things that they're valuing is the photo with their grandmother, or, their mom and their new mother-in-law dancing together, or, their dad shedding a tear at the toast during the reception. And yes, we're going to get those glam, beautiful couple shots, but I don't want that to be sort of the only part of the day that matters. So definitely filling it out with just the heart of a wedding. I always say that the reason you get married is because you love your person and you want to spend the rest of your lives together. But the reason you have a wedding is because you want to celebrate all the people that got you there, all the people that have been a part of your life for the last, 25, 30 years, whatever it is. And that's why you have a wedding. And so your wedding photos should really encompass that.
I like that concept. Yeah. Now, who's usually in charge of hiring you, directing you? Is it usually the bride and the groom?
Yes. Yeah. So I sign contracts with the bride and groom. I do sometimes with bigger weddings have if there's a planner involved, sometimes they will send the couple to me. But I do try and always touch base, and I have an ongoing conversation with 99.9% of my couples. So unless they're having like a really big wedding and are not interested in getting involved in the planning on any level, then I am talking through wedding photo layouts and plans and stuff with them ahead of time, and just making sure everyone's on the same page. I always say, like, they can make any decisions they want in terms of wedding photos and photos throughout the day, as long as they know what that decision means. So I have some couples that are like, we want to spend 45 minutes during sunset taking pictures of the two of us because that's what we want on our walls later. And I'm like, great. I just want you to make sure that, it's built into your schedule and you know that you won't be there for whatever, 45 minutes of that. And then I have couples on the complete opposite end. They're like, we'd rather do all of our photos before the wedding ceremony. We don't care if we're going to see each other before the ceremony, but we do care that, if we were to miss any time of our reception, we have people flying in from, all over the place. Mm-hmm. So.
Do you have any crazy wedding stories?
Not really. I've been really lucky to, like I was saying, like, I've built my brand long enough that the clients that come to me, I always just want to hug them at the end of the day and be like, you guys are right people and I love you, and like, when can we hang out again? Because it really is just, it's, you know, it's an emotion-filled day, and that then I get to be a part of it often allows me to have like an intimacy with the couple, and I'm spending so much time with them throughout the day compared to, I mean, you don't spend nearly as much time with your caterer, but you know, you spend the whole day with your photographer. So I get to know their families, their in and outs. I wish I had funny stories for you, but luckily / you know, I don't.
Yeah, usually funny stories come from crazy clients, right? So out of all the traveling you've done, what's been the country with the best food?
Oh, that's hard to say. India's up there. Cuba had really good food.
So how was Cuba?
Cuba was amazing. I've been twice, both for work and shooting travel stuff for travel small group tours.
So I know people that have gone to Cuba, and they all say it's like a time warp. It's like
totally
going
is.
right back to like the 40s and 50s.
It totally is. You know, I mean, I think that there's been a lot of political decisions that have kept that part of the world barricaded off from trade and stuff. And, you know, you really feel that. I think that it's interesting. I mean, it'll be really interesting to see what happens now since they don't have Castro in charge anymore. But, you know, it's just really, I think like everyone latches onto the cars, and that's really beautiful and fabulous. And they've got the old colonial buildings, and they're really gorgeous. But I think that it does come with some, you know, political difficulties and yeah, but it's really wonderful. It's just a really fabulous place to be.
What stood out the most there, especially when it came to your photography? What stood out the most that you were able to capture in Cuba?
I found that people were really, really willing and interested in being in photos. I pretty much always ask. So when you see portraits that I'm taking in foreign countries, I'm always asking people if that's okay. And if I don't speak the language or some semblance of the language, then I am making it clear that I'm asking with my camera. So I'll hold it up and kind of see if it's okay. And, you know, pretty much everyone can get okay or yes or no or whatever. And you don't even have to know that to make it clear if you don't want your photo taken. So I will say that I'm pretty much always asking, and I find that, you know, some places people don't want to. I haven't been to Morocco yet, but I hear people say like nobody wants their photo taken in Morocco, which I think is really interesting. That
Really?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess it's just a cultural, maybe a partly religious thing. But in Cuba, I've found that people just want their photo taken. They're excited to meet you. Especially I find a lot when I'm traveling by myself, like I'm a solo, young, white American traveler, and I have a big old camera. Like, I am an interesting, intriguing person. And so people do call me over, and it's just really fun. And so I found that I almost got no no's in Cuba in terms of photos. Although, you know, I think also, it was funny actually in India, not to kind of bring it back to India, but in India, I would ask a lot of people, and then they would also want a photo of me or photos with me, which I thought was really funny.
Like trading photos. Yeah.
So we did a lot of that, which was really fun. You know, one thing that's really magical about being a photographer and a travel photographer in a foreign country is that it is an in to talk to people and engage with people. You know, they don't there's not necessarily another situation in which you are reaching out and having, even if it's just a short conversation with people, just hanging out on the street or at a restaurant or wherever. And here it is, you know, and people are excited. So,
Well, I think photography is one of those art forms that people around the world just really appreciate, because you're really capturing the moment in time, and you're never going to have that exact same moment ever again. And the more talented you are, the more unique you can make this photo, and then that's where everyone just really comes around the photo, and they just really appreciate it. So I can totally see why people would love, I mean, especially if you're a photographer, hey, yeah, come here and take a photo of us in our group, or whatever the case is.
And it's interesting too. I mean, it's obvious, and then when you say it, you still feel like, oh my God, yes, of course. You don't need to speak any language in common to understand a photo, right? Like, photos are photos, and then that's part of why they're so popular, is that they really speak to everybody. So
Yeah. So it was the people in Cuba then that really stood out to you.
that was one of my favorite things. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, being that you travel so much, what's been your number one hands down country, or if you want to get more specific, hands down city that you think is the best to travel to?
It's hard to say. I mean, if I had to be super cliche, I can go back to Paris every damn year. And, I know people always, want to come and have me say something else. And there's been a million places that I love. And it's so hard to pick favorites. It's like picking a favorite child. But anytime there's a cheap flight to Paris, I will click purchase and head there. I think that, a lot of places can be very, very different from home. And that makes them exhausting to travel to, even if it is also thrilling and wonderful and educational and memorable and something you'll want to do again.
Why would it be exhausting?
It can be hard to figure out how to get around and to figure out what food is, or to, when we first landed in India, we're trying to get the lay of the street food land. And just, you do hear so many things about you're going to get sick, or the food is hard for Westerners to eat. And I've been lucky to have gone so many places, and yet I still felt like, okay, new landscape, like new city, like how do I navigate this? Mm. And it, takes a day. Give yourself a day. But for me, Paris, I can land, hit the museums, hit the cafes, and there's not as much. They have one of the best metro systems in the world, I think. Although India does too. Delhi had a really fantastic, because there's 20 million people in Delhi and the traffic is crazy. I think it's
20 million.
I think I should fact check this, but I want to say it's one of the biggest cities in the world. Wow. If not the biggest, or most populous, I should say. But
yeah, well, I mean, that's believable. I saw there was someone who was asked why their office was located in Singapore, and they said the reason why is because if you draw a radius circle of, I want to Delhi 7.
I know Shanghai is up there too. They have around 20 million.
Yeah. Yeah, so this gentleman was saying if you're in Singapore and you draw a radius of, I want to say, 2,000 miles, you're covering...
Second.
It's second?
Yes. Yeah, Tokyo.
Wow.
Tokyo. Wow. And Shanghai is third, yeah.
Yeah, so if you draw this radius circle, you end up encompassing... I want to say a third of the entire world population.
That's crazy.
Something crazy like that.
Yeah, that's insane.
Yeah, and that's why he's located his company over there, because you can grow your business. Yeah. You've got a huge market share out there. But yeah, those are just crazy numbers. And we were just briefly talking at the very beginning that you're going to Istanbul in Turkey. And this was 2011, I think it was 11 or 12,000, not 12,000. 11 or 12 million people living there.
It's so
many.
It's
a huge city.
It's a huge city, and I'm sure there will be the food and the excitement and the vibrancy to go with it.
The food's amazing.
I'm so excited.
Food's amazing. So, being that you also travel a lot, do you have any tips for finding like the cheapest hotel, cheapest flight, or the cheapest packages? Because many people will go online and, okay, it's very expensive, especially when it comes to flight. So what are your tips and tricks?
I have very good tips and tricks, but I always say you're not going to like them, because the funny thing about them is that the number one way to travel for cheap is to have a flexible schedule. And I know for so many people that's unfortunately not the reality. But often for cheap deals, I'm flying out on like a Monday or a Tuesday and coming back, also a Monday or a Tuesday or a Thursday or a Friday, which I know, you're going to want to I know you're going to want to maximize weekends if you have, a regular 9-to-5 kind of job. But let's see, I'm on the flight deal. I subscribe to Pomelo Travel. Pomelo Travel. It's a subscription service. I think they have a free version, and then I got it during Black Friday, and it was, I don't know, $29 for a year's subscription. I don't know if I would do it again, but I think that they often have similar deals to the flight deal. But I also have found some really good ones, so I can't really complain that much. I am going back to Paris in September, and I paid $410 for a direct flight out of San Francisco. So that's like a pretty solid price to get to Europe, Yeah. I also check out the Points Guy, which is a blog online. He posts a ton of different kind of travel tips and credit card stuff, how to maximize points for travel there. I got a $290 round trip flight to Lima a couple years ago.
Wow.
And I was there for a while, and $290, I mean, you can barely fly across the US for that price. Yeah, so that was awesome. And then I also definitely maximized credit card points. So I flew to Amsterdam last year for credit card points, so it wouldn't have been cheap otherwise necessarily, but I spent $54 out of pocket.
And
so
what was that blog called again?
The Points Guy.
The Points
and I
Guy?
can send you links so you can put
Yeah,
stuff in
yeah.
the show notes if you want. But yeah, but I would say, the biggest thing is going to be flexible time and flexible destination. So if you have
Now-
like a couple places in mind that you're interested in heading to, then it can be a lot easier to find something that's cool or that's cheap and cool.
Now, when you say a flexible schedule, are you talking about, okay, if I'm going to book something in May, maybe look at a few different dates in May, or, well, maybe May is not a good example because we're already in May, but let's say October, I'm looking at a few dates in October, or are you talking about flexibility like, hey, I'm available to go on a trip in 3 days, last minute deals?
Lucky for you, I'm talking about the first kind. So in terms of booking something, being able to go like shoulder season. So if you want to go anywhere in the middle of American summer when all the school kids are out, it's going to be more expensive. But Europe in May or September is a great time. It's not going to be too cold yet, or it's not going to still be too cold, but it's going to be cheaper everywhere. But yeah, so what I do is like if I hear that there is a deal to Barcelona, for example, I know that Oakland had new routes to Barcelona, and so they had some pretty solid deals because they were trying to get people on the new route. You can say, okay, I'm looking for something in May or something in September, and I will plug that into Google Flights. So Google has a really great flight search, and the reason I like it is that you put in the airport destinations, and then when you hit the dates, it will give you the lowest price available for that date. And so you'll see when it's green versus gray. And gray just means it's going to be kind of expensive or normal priced. Green is going to mean that you're going to see like a cheaper deal. And you can check stuff out, I think, as far away as 6 months out or 7 months out, or maybe I even want to say a year. I'm not quite sure on exactly how far, but you can really suss out. And you'll be able to see like flying on a Saturday morning or a Friday night is going to, sometimes be another 30% on top of that versus flying out on like a Monday or Tuesday.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So those last minute deals are not the best deals?
I find, I love the idea of last minute deals, but I just don't see them come through. I think that, they really prey on people that suddenly find out that they need to be somewhere. Or suddenly have time off and want to make use of that. But maybe for that, your best option is a road trip.
Yeah. Okay, so you currently live in Berkeley, is that correct?
I lived in Berkeley for 10 years, and 2 weeks ago I moved to Redwood City. So
Okay.
my partner works at Facebook and didn't want to be commuting, and so we switched cities.
Okay, so now you were born and raised in Half Moon Bay.
Born in Oakland, moved to Half Moon Bay when I was 10, and then moved to Berkeley to go to UC Berkeley, and then stayed.
Okay,
And then
so
I just moved to Redwood
you
City.
lived in the Bay Area basically your entire life.
Born and bred.
Yeah. So how do you like the Bay Area?
I love it. I've been so many places, and I will always call the Bay Area home.
So one thing I referred to on the podcast, to the Bay Area, about the Bay Area on the podcast is we're like a bubble within a bubble within a bubble. Is that true, being that you've traveled so much to all these different places? How does the Bay Area compare to the rest of the world?
I mean, we're some of the most privileged people in the world. Straight up. I mean, financially, with some gorgeous locations to head to. We have some of the best food. I think that, you'll find wonderful things to compliment everywhere you go. And I think everyone that calls those places home will be like, how could you ever leave here? How could you say that where you live is the best? But the Bay Area is a true gem, and I think that it's been really cool. We have so many advantages and so much privilege, and we're able to use that to really push the boundaries on what's possible and what's interesting. And, we have so much tech coming out of here that's really cool. We have so much food that's pushing boundaries. And we also have cool things like compost and, food that's, I don't know, gluten-free or vegan or whatever. Yes, it's coming from a place of privilege, but it's also, we've got some really cool outcomes. And so I think we're really maximizing what we've got to really explore, and hopefully, the rest of the world can learn from some things. I was just recently thinking about this because, California doesn't have plastic bags, and it's been a while for that. And before that, Berkeley didn't have plastic bags. So I don't remember the last time I was able to get a plastic bag at a store. And I was out on a road trip and I got like a single pack of M&Ms and the cashier put it right in a plastic bag, and I was like, oh my gosh, what are we doing? You know, because we have so much plastic in the oceans and we have plastic all over the place in landfills and stuff. And you know, I always want to say, like, look at California, like we can do it. We can get rid of plastic bags. And I know that's only one example, but it's just really cool that we can test things out that hopefully will make the world better for everyone else too.
Yeah. Now, what's been one of the best or one of your favorite places to photograph here in the Bay Area?
Oh, we have so many gorgeous spots on the coast. I mean, I think I don't know if everybody where they live wants to go to some of the most touristy spots, but I think that San Francisco's touristy spots and California's touristy spots are really, bar none, some of the best. You know, I mean, heading out to the Golden Gate Bridge and Slacker Hill and going up to Sausalito and going down the coast along, I mean, Ocean Beach is absolutely stunning, and right next to all those little colorful ticky-tacky houses. It's just, I mean, the coast at sunset is absolutely gorgeous. So.
Yeah. You know, one of my favorite drives to do, I mean, and it's not like it's a big drive, but driving into Tiburon, going to the restaurants and just seeing all the residential houses on the sides, and then you've got the bay, the water bay, and then just the hillsides and the homes. I mean, it's just a gorgeous drive right into that downtown area.
I know. And it was actually funny. I was thinking about it because of planning for Italy and stuff, and I'm looking at all these like gorgeous coastal towns, and in Italy they've got the houses down the coast too, and I was like, you know, this is going to be absolutely fabulous, but it kind of looks like where I live.
Yeah.
So, you know, we really are so lucky. And then even like you think about the number of places you can head to on a short road trip from the Bay Area, right? Like you could go down to Monterey and Santa Cruz. You can head up to Yosemite, which is like one of the most, I mean, Yosemite basically birthed the national love of national parks. And we've got that. I mean, it's like a 4-hour drive to the park entrance. Like that's incredible, you know, and then you head up north, like Mendocino or Fort Bragg, I mean, are really phenomenal, beautiful places. And we have, you know, gorgeous places to get out and go see.
And then
you know,
you have Napa close by.
We have Napa close by.
Tahoe,
Tahoe, of course, I know, right? I mean, there's just like so many places. And then like even LA is not that far. It's like a quick hour flight and you're there and you get the whole second city on the West Coast that's so big and
yeah, and the
gorgeous.
drive is not too bad. I mean,
not
you
so
hit
bad.
LA 5 and you're just zooming
5,
down.
6 hours, boom.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I feel really lucky to call this place home base, and I think there's so many creative, interesting things going on here, and yet also easy to get out and see what else is going on nearby.
So let's pretend I'm moving to the Bay Area, and I come to you and I ask you, what is the best spot for food? Where do I go?
I mean, hard to say, hard to go wrong is what I would first say. If you're like into something a little bit fancier and love ramen, then I love the ramen shop in Oakland. I really love around the corner from there-ish. There's, I don't know what this little creamery has the best homemade soft serve. I'll have to send you the link because I'll have to look it up. But the best homemade soft serve I've ever had. Let's see, down the way we have Bake Sale Betty's best fried chicken sandwich with the best coleslaw ever. Another part of Oakland over there, we have Cholita Linda, which has like Cuban sandwich, California version of Cuban sandwiches, I will definitely say, having been to Cuba. But they're absolutely phenomenal and definitely a place I'll take people. You know, in the Mission, I love heading to Panchitos to have pupusas. I mean, so good. Like really holding out classic Mission San Francisco. Mission Chinese has fabulous Chinese food. Although I will say, definitely the hype is worth it. But go with a large party because they serve family style, and you're gonna want to taste everything. And if it's just 2 people, you can't eat enough. So go with a big party. I remember going with like a smaller group last time, and I was like, that party over there has 12 people. They're definitely doing it right. So.
Yeah. Okay, so for someone new coming into the Bay Area, instead of food, if they want to experience something very scenic, if they want a great place to take photos, where should they go?
You know what? Go right to the heart of iconic San Francisco and go to Baker Beach for a beautiful sunset. Bring a picnic blanket. You'll want to shoot and then hang and shoot and hang. And definitely bring a jacket. Sometimes it'll get cold once the sun goes behind the horizon there. But one of the most phenomenal views of the Golden Gate Bridge. So
Awesome. Well, thank you for being on the podcast.
thank you so much.
And I mean, it was just a great episode. Talked about so much travel, which I love, and good luck to your upcoming trips.
Thank you so much.
I'll look out for the photos on Instagram.
I can't wait to share.
Yeah.
All right. Have a good one.
You too. Thank you so much for listening to the podcast. Thank you to our producer, Sam Lubman. Please subscribe, like, comment, and share the podcast. Remember, you can listen to the podcast on iTunes, Podbean, iHeartRadio, Google Play, SoundCloud, and anywhere else you listen to podcasts. For more information on my business as a property manager and real estate team, go visit my website at marcguzman.com. I really want to thank all of you for listening. It means the world to me, and I hope today's episode provides you value in your day-to-day life. I created this podcast to help showcase the many great people that live in this world and help share some knowledge that I've learned along the way in life. Again, thank you for listening. Check out our sponsors, and I'll catch you on the next episode.